The family went upstairs at 11. By 1:30, the drawing room was dark, the last door had closed, and the house, as far as anyone above stairs was concerned, was asleep. It wasn't. Below their feet, in rooms they had never entered, the working day had 6 hours left to run. And the people running it had already been awake for 17. There is a girl in the scullery of this house who is 13 years old. Right now, at 11:20 at night, she is scouring the last copper pan with sand and a rag. Because the sand is cheaper than soap and the pan has to be dry before it's hung, or it will rust by morning and the cook will notice. She will finish at midnight. She will be woken again at 4:30. Nobody in the bedrooms above her knows her name. Some of them have never seen her face. And that isn't cruelty. That's the design. In a house like this, a scullery maid who is seen is a scullery maid who has done something wrong. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to stay downstairs all night. 11 at night to 7 in the morning, hour by hour, in one English country house in the autumn of 1889. And along the way I want you to keep 3 questions in your head. Why was the youngest child in the house given the most dangerous job in it? Why did the butler sleep in a cupboard, on purpose, by his own choosing? And what, exactly, had to happen in the dark so that at 8 o'clock the next morning a family could walk into a warm room, pick up a newspaper that had already been ironed, and believe that this was simply how the world arranged itself? Get comfortable. This one moves slowly, and it's meant to. The house has 41 rooms. 26 of them are for the family and their guests. The other 15 are for the 23 people who make the first 26 possible. We'll call the girl in the scullery Ellen, because 100,000 girls in England that year were called something like it, and because the records that survive from houses like this one very rarely bothered with a surname. Above her, in strict order, a butler, a housekeeper, a cook, a lady's maid, a valet, 2 footmen, 3 housemaids, 2 kitchen maids, a laundry maid, a still-room maid, a nursemaid, a hall boy, an outside, grooms, gardeners, a coachman. They have a hierarchy more rigid than the families. The butler and the housekeeper take their pudding in a separate room from the rest. The lower servants stand when they enter. And between these 2 worlds, the families and theirs, there is a door. It's covered in green baize. Thick, felted wool, tacked down at the edges with brass studs. The baize isn't decoration. It's acoustic. It swallows sound. Push it and it closes behind you with a soft sigh instead of a bang. On one side, carpets, wallpaper, oil paintings, warmth. On the other, stone flags, whitewash, cold, and the smell of coal and carbolic. That door is the most honest object in the entire building. Everything the family enjoys is manufactured on the far side of it, and the door exists to make sure they never hear it happening. Tonight, we're on the far side. The butler begins his round. He is 51. He has been in service since he was 12, which means he has done some version of this walk more than 14,000 times. Shutters first. Every ground floor window, folded out of its casing, barred across. Then the doors. Front, garden, gun room, the door to the yard. Then the lamps, wick by wick, each one turned down rather than blown out, because blowing them out sends soot up the glass and the housemaids will have to clean it in the morning. Then the clocks. In a house this size there might be a dozen, and most of them are wound weekly. But the long case clock in the hall is his, personally, every night, because if that clock drifts, the entire household drifts with it. And then the silver. The plate, the silver, is the single most valuable movable thing in the house. Candlesticks, salvers, cutlery, the pen that sits in the middle of the dining table and does nothing except cost money. It lives in the butler's pantry, in a safe or an iron-lined closet. And the butler sleeps beside it. Not in a bedroom. in a narrow bed that folds down in the pantry itself, or in a boxed alcove off it. Sometimes a space barely wider than the mattress. Some of these beds survive. They look like coffins with hinges. He does this because that is the job. He is not simply the head of the servants. He is a body, placed deliberately between the silver and the window for 40 years. That's the first answer. And it tells you something uncomfortable about how this house valued its people, because the butler was the most senior servant in the building, and his reward for that seniority was to sleep in a cupboard, next to the objects that mattered more than he did. Down the passage from the pantry, high on the wall of the servants' corridor, hangs a board. 30 labeled bells on coiled brass springs. Drawing room. Library. Blue bedroom. Nursery. Master's dressing room. Wires run from each of those rooms, through the walls, over pulleys, around corners, down to this one wall. Pull a handle upstairs and a wire travels 40 feet through the fabric of the house and sets one small bell shivering on its spring. The spring matters. It means the bell keeps trembling for several seconds after it stops ringing, so that if you came running a moment late, you can still see which bell was rung. That's the whole system, and it's brilliant, and it's also the most complete statement of the relationship in this house that anyone ever built. A member of the family never has to raise their voice, cross a room, or know a name. They pull a handle, and a person appears. At 11:30 the board is still. It will not stay still. Across the yard, in a building deliberately separated from the house because of the steam and the smell, tomorrow has already started. Tomorrow is Monday. Monday is wash day, and wash day in a house like this is not a chore. It's an industrial operation that takes 3 days and never fully ends. Tonight the laundry maid is doing the soaking. Sheets, shirts, tablecloths, napkins, drawers, stockings, sorted by whiteness and by whose body they touched. The family's linen and the servants' linen are never washed together. She fills the wooden tubs. She shaves soap. The heavy things go into steep overnight, because a cotton sheet that has soaked for 8 hours takes half the beating in the morning that a dry one does, and it's her arms doing the beating. Tomorrow she'll be at the copper by 5, boiling water in a vat the size of a bathtub, lifting sodden linen out of it with a wooden dolly, feeding it through a mangle heavy enough to break a wrist. 52 Mondays a year. For as long as her shoulders hold out. Midnight. Ellen has finished the pans. But before anyone sleeps, the fires have to be dealt with, and this is more delicate than it sounds. You don't put a fire out. Putting it out means relighting it from nothing at 5 in the morning, in the cold, which costs kindling, and time, and temper. Instead you bank it, you rake the hot coals into a compact heap, damp them down with slack, the dust and small fragments at the bottom of the coal scuttle, and you smother the whole thing just enough that it smoulders through the night without flame. Done well, it holds 8 hours of heat. Done badly, it either dies, or it doesn't stay contained. Chimney fires were the constant terror of these houses. A flue lined with years of soot, one draft, and the fire goes up instead of out. Country house after country house burned in the 19th century, and a startling number of them burned at night, and a startling number of those started with a fire that somebody banked wrong at midnight. So the last thing the housemaid does before bed is stand in a dark room she has just made warm, watching a heap of coal, deciding whether it's safe. The women go up. Not by the main staircase, that's carpeted, and it belongs to the family. They use the back stairs, bare deal boards, no rail, a spiral or a straight run tucked inside the wall. Their rooms are at the very top of the house, under the roof, where the ceiling slopes so hard that you can only stand upright in the middle. 2 to a bed, sometimes 3. An iron frame. A horsehair mattress. A washstand with a jug that will have ice on it by February. There is no fire up here. Not one. Every room in this building can be heated except the rooms where the people who heat them sleep. They undress in the dark, because candles are counted, the housekeeper issues them, and an extra one is noticed. And if you climb into one of these attics today, in a house that's now a museum, and you get a torch up into the roof timbers, you will find names scratched into the beams. Initials, dates, a full signature if the writer was proud of it. Nobody was going to record these people. So some of them recorded themselves, in the only place nobody would ever think to look. One person is still downstairs. The hall boy is 11 or 12. He's the lowest ranking male servant in the house, and in many houses he doesn't get a bedroom at all. He gets a truckle bed, a low wooden frame that he pulls out in the servants' hall after everyone has gone, and folds away before anyone comes down. He sleeps in the room where they all ate. He is also, functionally, the night watchman. If something happens between 1 and 5, a noise, a smell of smoke, a bell, he's the one who's there. Think about that arrangement for a moment. 23 adults in the building, and the person left awake at the boundary between the sleeping house and the outside world is a child who hasn't finished growing. He is not there because he is brave. He is there because he is cheap, and because he is at the bottom, and the bottom is where you put the hours nobody else wants. That's the second answer. There's one more light burning, and it's not downstairs. On the nursery floor, the night nursery is dimly lit by a rushlight or a nightlight floating in oil, and the nurse is awake, because a small child has woken. She settles it. She has done this so many times she does it half asleep herself. And here is one of the quiet tragedies of a house like this, tucked inside an ordinary domestic moment. The children of these families were raised, overwhelmingly, by women who were paid to do it. Fed by them, dressed by them, taught their prayers by them, comforted by them at 2 in the morning. They saw their mother for an hour before dinner, brushed and presented and on best behavior. Which means a very large number of Victorian children loved their nurse more than they loved their mother, and were expected, on turning 8 or 9, to stop. She stays until the breathing evens out. Then she goes back to her own bed in the next room, which is the closest thing to a bedroom any servant in this house has got. 3 in the morning is the quietest the house will ever be. 23 people asleep. The banked fires ticking as they cool. The long case clock in the hall. Somewhere in the walls, a bell wire moving very slightly with the temperature. And this is the moment to say the thing this whole night has been circling. In 1889, more than 1 million people in England were employed in domestic service. It was the single largest form of paid work for women in the country, bigger than the mills, bigger than agriculture. Roughly 1 in every 3 working women. They are almost entirely absent from the histories that were written at the time. They appear in the census as a first name and the word servant. They appear in household accounts as a figure in a column. They appear in the letters of the families they served as the girl, or our cook, or not at all. We have thousands of photographs of these houses. Drawing rooms, libraries, terraces, dogs. We have very few of these attics. 4:30. Ellen wakes in the dark, no clock in the room, so somebody older shakes her, and she goes down for flights of bare stairs without a candle, because she knows the count of the steps better than she knows her own face. She is the first person in the house to move, and the reason is simple: nothing else can happen until the kitchen range is lit. The range is a cast iron monster along one wall. Ovens, hot plates, a boiler. It has to be raked out, yesterday's ash and clinker shoveled into a bucket, laid with paper and kindling and coal, and lit. And then it needs an hour, minimum, before it will do anything useful. Everything in this house that will happen today runs downstream of this one girl at 4:30 with a box of matches. She does the raking with her bare hands. Not because gloves don't exist. Because gloves are for people who are being protected, and nobody has decided that she is. While the range comes up to heat, she starts on the grates. This is where the black lead comes in, and it's worth understanding exactly what it is, because it explains a great deal about the state of a scullery maid's hands. Black lead isn't lead. It's graphite, mixed into a paste. You apply it to the cast iron with a brush, let it dry, and then you polish it, hard, with a second brush and a cloth, until the iron comes up to a deep, even, gunmetal shine. It gets everywhere. Under the fingernails, into the creases of the knuckles, into any split in the skin. It doesn't come out with washing. A scullery maid's hands are grey. Then the steel, knives and fenders, cleaned with brick dust or emery on a leather board, because stainless steel won't be invented for another 20-odd years, and ordinary steel spots with rust if you look at it wrong. Then the hot water, the soda, the scrubbing. And this is the arithmetic of it. Cold room, before dawn, no heating, wet hands. That's chilblains, the skin on the fingers swelling, cracking, and itching so badly it's difficult to sleep. Then hot water and washing soda into the cracks. And the kneeling. Hours a day on stone. There's a name for the injury it produces, and the name tells you everything about how routine it was. They called it housemaid's knee. A medical condition named after the job that caused it. Not a rare complication. A job description. By the time a girl is 20, her hands look 40. By 40, her knees are finished. 5:30, and the house begins to fill with quiet movement. The housemaids come down carrying a housemaid's box of a wooden tray with a handle, holding brushes, cloths, black lead, emery, and a sheet of coarse cloth to spread on the carpet so the hearth's dirt doesn't reach it. They work in a fixed order, room by room, and the order is not arbitrary. The rooms the family will enter first get done first. Rake out. Sweep the hearth. Lay the new fire. Blacklead the grate. Polish the fender. Sweep the carpet, on hands and knees, with damp tea leaves scattered over it to hold the dust down. Dust every surface. Straighten every object back to exactly where it was. Then the coal. Coal is carried. There's no other way to move it. A full scuttle weighs somewhere between 20 and 30 pounds, and it goes up the back stairs, one at a time, one flight at a time, to every room that needs a fire. 10 scuttles is a normal morning. 15 isn't unusual. 30 pounds. For flights. 15 times. Before breakfast. At 14 years old. Back downstairs, the hall boy is at his own morning's work. The boots. Every pair worn yesterday, lined up in a row, riding boots, walking boots, evening shoes, children's shoes. Mud scraped, dubbing or blacking applied, then brushed, first with a stiff brush, then a soft one, then a cloth, until they come up to a shine that will survive one walk across a wet lawn. Then the knives. Not washed, cleaned, on a board or in a knife machine, a wooden drum with leather-faced rollers inside. You feed the blades in, sprinkle in the powder, turn the handle, and grind the tarnish off. Which also, slowly, grinds the knife away. Victorian table knives from these houses are visibly thin, worn down by their own cleaning. Meanwhile the still room maid has the breakfast breads going, and the cook has arrived, and the kitchen, which was silent 90 minutes ago, is now a room where 4 people move around a hot range without ever once getting in each other's way, because they have done this every single morning for years. And upstairs, one of the footmen is doing something that sounds invented, and isn't. He is ironing the newspaper. 7 o'clock. Hot water goes up. Brass cans, filled from the range, with a folded towel laid over the top to hold the heat, one to each bedroom, set outside the door, silently. Curtains are drawn in the rooms downstairs. Fires that were laid at 6 are lit at 7, so that every room the family enters is warm when they enter it, and not before, because a fire burning in an empty room is coal wasted. The dining room is laid. Silver, polished last night, set out. Covered dishes on the sideboard over spirit burners. Coffee. The iron newspaper, folded, at the head of the table. And then, at about 7:30, every servant in the front of the house disappears. That's the choreography. Not finish the work. Finish the work and become invisible. In some households the rule was formal and absolute. If you met a member of the family on the stairs, you stopped, turned, and faced the wall until they had passed. Ellen has been awake for 3 hours. The house has been awake for 8.5. 8 o'clock. A door opens on the first floor. The gentleman of the house comes downstairs into a hallway that is warm. He walks across a carpet that was swept on somebody's knees at 6. He passes a grate that shines because a 13-year-old rubbed graphite into it before dawn. He goes into the dining room, where the fire has been burning for exactly 1 hour, sits down, and picks up a newspaper that has been pressed flat so the ink won't come off on his fingers. And here is the thing I want to be careful about, because it's the point. He is not a monster. He is very probably a perfectly decent man who gives generously to the parish and is kind to his dogs. He simply does not think about it, and the entire architecture of this house, from the green baize door to the bell board to the back staircase, exists to make sure that he never has to. That's the third answer. Everything that happened in the dark happened so that the morning could look effortless. The labor wasn't hidden because it was shameful. It was hidden because visible effort would have spoiled the effect. So what happened to Ellen? Honestly? In most cases, we don't know, and I'm not going to invent it. But we know the shapes these lives took because the records show us the same for Rhodes again and again. Some married, often another servant, often a groom or a footman, and left service because almost no household kept a married housemaid. Some rose. Scullery to kitchen maid to cook, or housemaid to head housemaid to housekeeper. 30 years, and a set of keys, and a room of your own at last. Some stayed, and simply got old in the job, and were kept on out of affection with lighter duties, which sounds warm until you notice that it depended entirely on being liked. There was no pension. There was no entitlement. There was goodwill, and goodwill is not a system. And some were dismissed, and if you were dismissed without a character, without a written reference, you were finished. No other household would take you. That single sheet of paper could end a working life, and the person holding the pen was the person you'd just displeased. For Rhodes, only one of them was safe. And which one you took was decided, in large part, by whether the family happened to be kind. The house is still standing. Most of it is roped off now, and people pay to walk through the drawing room and admire the ceiling. But if you go through the door at the back of the hall, the one with the green baize still tacked to it, and down the stone steps into the passage, you'll find the bell board. 30 bells. 30 labels. Drawing room. Library. Blue bedroom. Nursery. Nobody has pulled those handles in 100 years. The wires are still in the walls. And upstairs, in the attic where nobody goes, somebody's name is still cut into the beam. Sleep well.